So this is Atticus's first time with the saddle pad and the saddle. And something I have noticed with him is that if I approach things towards his head first, he is actually more reactive than if I approach his body with them first. So some horses, I would let them sniff and check it out first. And you can see just by me walking around his head, he's kind of moving away from me, versus when I'm taking it a little bit more towards his body, he's still tense and bracing a little bit, but he's actually a bit more accepting of things towards the main part of his body than if I go towards his face more. So right now I'm just mostly avoiding his face whenever I'm introducing things to him and bringing it more towards his body. And I will touch his face, pet his face, things like that. But other than the halter and my hands or maybe a treat, I'm really not doing a whole lot around his face at the moment. So he's taking to objects quite well right now, and you can see how quickly he's moving on with the saddle pad, with me just introducing it on both sides a little bit, rubbing it on his body. I'm tossing it up here a little bit more carelessly so that when I grab the saddle, he won't be as reactive to that, because it's gonna be slightly heavier. I do use the synthetic saddle in this video with him, but that is not the one I will be riding in, but it's a good beater up saddle that is lighter, easier for me to lift, especially on the big horses like this. And if it falls on the ground, I don't care. So just trying to make sure he's good with tossing the saddle pad up and down, taking it off, rubbing it on him, things like that. He was pretty easy going with it, and he's been much better with me introducing new things in a low stress way. If I try to make a bigger deal of it and let him check it out with his nose, it actually makes him more anxious. If I just kind of act like he's been doing it for a while and take my time but not make a big deal of it, he gets over it very quickly. So with the saddle pad or the saddle here, I take it to his side first. Here in a second, you'll get to see I go right past his face. I don't let him sniff it or anything, and I go to just lifting it towards his side a little bit. So right here, I'm going to just lift it towards his side a little bit, and you can see he's a little bit concerned with it, and he's looking at it out the corner of his eye there. And I want him to take a step forward because he kind of took a step back, and there, if I move away from him, he's kind of checking it out a little bit. But see how jumpy he is with his face. He's just much more concerned with anything around his face right now. So I'm just kind of touch his sides with the saddle a little bit before really lifting it up higher, just keeping it a little bit lower so it's not up in the air waving around. It's easier for him, easier for me. Get him to move his feet a little bit so he doesn't get stuck. If he was engaging and wants to look at it, I let him, but I don't bring it towards his face. I move away and let him come towards it with his face. So these are kind of similar reactions to anything new I've been introducing to him lately. He'll kind of lean like you see him doing here, but he's been doing a really good job about not running away as much. Just want to make sure his feet don't get sticky, so I make sure I move him around a little bit. I don't need him to move a lot. I don't want to amp him up and send him into a flight response. I just don't want his feet to get stuck in one spot. So here, I'm just lifting it up, and I actually rested on his back, but I have everything on that left side. The stirrup was not on the right side at all. You see how quickly he's responding and getting used to things that he hasn't seen before. He has never seen a saddle before in a session with me. So he is very quick to pick things up, very quick to settle when he feels like I'm not being intense with him. Different horses all approach this a little bit differently, but the more movement he has right now, the more stressed he gets. And so I make sure he moves his feet, don't get sticky, but then I'm not doing a whole lot of moving around with him right now. You can see how easy he took that. So in this session, I chose not to put a girth on him. I probably could have with no issue, but one of the big reasons I chose not to put a girth on is this saddle fits him really, really poorly. And just by him walking around, it was sliding back and moving around. And so with that happening, I did not want to put a girth on and him have a bigger reaction and then the saddle end up sliding around where it shouldn't and causing a problem. So I had a girth out to possibly put on him, and had the saddle not been so poorly fitting and moving around quite so much, I would have gone ahead and put a girth on in this session, but I just didn't want to create a problem. So again, you see I'm having him follow me, a little bit of movement, let him stop and check out the saddle, take a look at it. But it's more about just letting him get to see it, get to feel it a little bit. I don't want to drive him around and make him feel like I'm chasing him. You can see me readjusting the saddle because it keeps sliding back. I will be using a very different saddle for riding him when we get to that point, and moving forward, tacking him up, I will be going to a different saddle as well when we're ready to put the girth on. So with a horse like this, that he's really looking to me for engagement, for what he's supposed to do, what I'm asking of him, I want him to follow me around a little bit more because it gives him a little bit more comfort. A horse that's a little bit more reactive and explosive, then I'm going to be sending them a little bit more and giving space between them and myself. So here I'm just kind of rubbing him with my hand right where that girth would go. I'm using a little bit of pressure where that girth goes so that he can start getting used to that, me reaching underneath him for when I do girth it up. So now I'm going to go ahead and send him off a little bit, and you can still see, like, when I don't have the training flag, he's still a little bit slow to move off, and he wants to turn to me a lot more. So this is something that as we keep going, he'll get better with. But right now he's learned that I'm not running him away from me. And so instead of fleeing from me on the line, he stops and looks at me a lot, which is a step in a good direction where he's not just running from me, he's wanting to engage, but it also has made his feet slightly more sticky. So as we go, he'll get a little bit more smooth with that. You can see how much the saddle's tipping and twisting, and he's checking it out. These are all good things. Just kind of let him hang out with the saddle, let him feel it. And he handled this very well, couldn't ask for anything better. But you can see now that I've pulled it off, he's kind of hesitant with his face again, but he right here with me moving away a little bit was more interested in engaging. When I held up the saddle pad, it took him a second for him to want to re-engage back because I was bringing it towards his face. But he did come back around. So there you go. That was his first time with a saddle pad and a saddle, and you can kind of see how he has been recently with introducing new things.